Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Valder, and I am one of the co-founders of Garage Sale Trail. Thank you so much for joining us here today for the Trail Tutorials Secondhand Selling, What It Takes to Make It session. To kick things off, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia. I'd like to acknowledge their connections to land, to community, and to sea. And we pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So a huge thank you and welcome to you all for joining the session, Secondhand Selling, What It Takes to Make It. Delighted to have people tuning in from all around the country. I suspect it's going to be quite a wonderful session because we've got a panel chock full of experience, chock full of personality, and chock full of knowledge. So for those of you who are new to Garage Sale Trail, allow me to explain just a little bit about who we are. So we are a not-for-profit who's been around since 2010. We aim to connect communities and to keep good stuff out of landfill. We exist to extend the life of stuff with the bigger picture objective of preserving this fragile and beautiful planet on which we live. So many of you will know Garage Sale Trail through our weekends of garage sales. That's what we're best known for. That's where several 100,000 Australians come together to sell and shop. And this year that happens on November 11, 12, and 18 and 19. And if you'd like to register to be a seller, you still can do so. It's free to do so. Or you can go to the website and see what's happening in your local area as a shopper. Garage Sale Trail is made possible by a range of wonderful partners across the government space, in local government, in state government, with some private sector partners, and also with some wonderful community partners. And of course, the sellers and shoppers that make it all possible. But let's turn our attention now to what we're here to do, which is a trail tutorial on secondhand selling. I am now going to introduce our wonderful panelists, because we're joined by a really amazing panel of experts with really different experience and backgrounds, but united by one thing. And that one thing is that they know a thing or two about how to sell. Before we do the introductions, encourage you to ask any questions. You can go to the Q&A box and put in a question, and we'll either get to it during the course of the conversation or at the end, we might end up addressing all the questions. Let's just see how it goes. So before we dive into it, let me introduce you to our panelists. First up, we have Brad and Jazz, aka two Aussie Thrifters. Brad and Jazz, based in Adelaide, run a successful online secondhand business that combines both treasure hunting, thrifting, and flipping. And each year they are selling a bucket load of items. They're rehoming thousands of items. And you can follow their journey on their YouTube channel. You can find out what their finds are and how they go about it. Good afternoon to you, Brad and Jazz.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We love Garage Sale Trail and we can't wait to get into it. So.
Thank you for being here. So let's turn our attention now to our second panelist, Jane Crowley. Jane is the founder and managing director of Dirty Jane's Vintage Emporium, based here in New South Wales, with two locations, in Barrel and in Canberra, and a soon-to-open location in Orange. Jane's been working in the space for over 25 years, and her expertise extends into small business, commercial interior design, and sourcing. When Jane sent us some information about her, there was one part of her bio that absolutely stood out to us. It's something that we hold dearly, and it's Jane's business philosophy, which centers around reusing, repurposing, and upcycling to create a better future for our planet.
Yeah.
She's a busy woman. She's an author of 2 books with another one to come out. Welcome, Jane. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Andrew. Lovely to be here.
And lastly, but definitely not least, is Jacob Miller. Jacob is an extremely dynamic and experienced leader in the op shop charity space, who brings a really special brand of passion and skill to transform charity retail spaces. Jacob has worked with a whole range of players in the space, Binnies, Salvos, and is now the senior manager of op shops at Uniting for Victoria and Tasmania. He has a wonderful background with garage sales, being involved in garage sales with family members from a young age, and joined the op shop charity sector at an extremely young age of 14, and has since worked for charity shops all over the world. Some of you may know Leo Schofield, who dubbed Jacob as the brains behind the most stylish thrift emporium in the Southern Hemisphere. Quite an excellent piece of advocacy there from Leo. Welcome, Jacob.
Thanks, Andrew. Great to be here. And yes, it's hard to be on Leo's good side, so glad I'm there.
So now with everyone introduced, let's dive into what this session's all about. And let's start by getting to know a little bit more about who you each are. Let's start with you guys, Brad and Jazz. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. What is it that you do, and how have you arrived here on your journey?
Thank you. So firstly, yeah, we are Brad and Jazz.
And we go by 2 Aussie Thrifters, and we sell secondhand online. So our full-time job is predominantly selling on eBay. We started this about 6 years ago, just in our home, just as a hobby. And we were selling off Brad's video games to fund his collection. But 6 years on, we are now a company. We're working out of a warehouse. And this last year, we rehomed over 10,000 items. And there's really nothing else we'd rather be doing.
Pretty impressive. So a question, how did it all start?
Yeah, for me, it really started as like trying to collect video games. So I was trying to live my 90s childhood, buying back all like Nintendo 64 games and Nintendo Entertainment System games. And I was just buying them in bulk. And I was just getting all these doubles, and I didn't really know what to do with them at the time. So I jumped on YouTube and found a couple of Americans that were flipping stuff online. So I decided, let's give it a crack. And yeah, essentially it's just grown and grown from there. And I was able to build myself a collection without spending a heap of money. So yeah, it was a really cool way to get into collecting.
It definitely combined our collecting tendencies with our love of treasure hunting, and now it's our livelihood.
And I guess it started out for you as a side hustle.
That's
Yeah, absolutely. We were both working full-time job and doing eBay when we got home from those jobs, going out to garage sales and op shops on the weekend and buying things from all different places to try and make a little bit of extra cash for ourselves. And then along the way, COVID come along and Jazzy's job ended. And that's when we really started diving into this full-time. So yeah.
So it was about a 3-year period, was it, from side hustle to taking it on full time? Is that right?
Yeah, it was a very slow build. Initially, we didn't even think it was going to become our jobs. It was just something we did for fun. But yeah, it takes a long time to build up a store like that and have consistent sales. So yeah, it takes sort of 3 years for us to do that, and now 3 years kind of full time between us both. And yeah, things are growing. Keeps
us very busy.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Well, I think your knowledge and experience and your kind of really being on the coalface of sourcing and then selling online is going to be extremely interesting for the audience today. So look forward to kind of unpacking that a bit more.
Thank you. We hope so.
Let's turn our attention now to Jane. Good afternoon, Jane.
Hi, Andrew.
Thank you for joining us, Jane.
Thank you.
I would love to hear a little bit more about your story. So how it'd be great to hear, what is it, and explain to people who are here today, what is it that you do and how did you come about doing this?
Okay, so look, I've been in the space of vintage and secondhand since I could crawl, basically. My dad has been an antique dealer all his life, and I kind of inadvertently just joined the family firm. Tried to get out of it, and then I think it brought me back in. So 15 years ago, Dad and I started Dirty Jane's in Barrel, which is a marketplace that has 90 individual businesses or dealers. And they do everything from, just good secondhand clothing, books, furniture, you name it. We then opened up in Canberra in March 2020, 5 days before the country went into lockdown.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story. So we're trading there. And then, as you say, we're opening in Orange. We look after the businesses entirely. The store holders come in and bring in their beautiful stock and merchandise it beautifully. And then we look after all of the customers that come in. We do a bit of online, and we've got an amazing team that run both stores. Marketing, we do it all for them. So if it's a side hustle or if it's someone's main business, they don't have to be there. They can be in their sheds being creative, which a lot of them are, which is fantastic. And we just create this beautiful community where we're all supporting each other, which is really fantastic.
So would it be fair to say, Jane, you're sort of like a real world version of an eBay in the sense of providing a framework for other sellers to come and use the framework you've created to sell their wares?
Yeah. Look, we're very much that bricks and mortar. While we respect that there is very much an online presence these days in business, we went into it saying we want to offer customers who come into a Dirty Jane's the ultimate in retail experience. Our North Star is always customer service, and we really aim to just share that love of, the hunt of you never know what you're going to find. And I think our customers, people have described Dirty Jane's as their happy place. And it's really lovely because you see the joy that people get when they find something really special that they're going to take home that's secondhand.
Yeah, wonderful. Amazing.
It's good.
So turning our attention now to Jacob, who got into the space at the ripe old age of 14, according to the bio. I think there's some quite interesting stories here, Jacob. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the journey you've been on.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I got into the space almost by accident where I was in Hobart and met with the head of retail for Vinnie's, who my job interview consisted of, here's the key, can you open on Saturday? And for anyone who's tried to get a job in the op shop space now, it's a bit harder than that. And so I did op shops kind of on the side through my schooling and uni. I did uni in Sydney, so stayed with op shops there. And I actually have education is my game, and did a little bit of time in education. I thought I miss that hunt that Jane was talking about. I miss the creativity. I miss the queer community intersection with secondhand and self-expression. And so for me, it was just actually, I'm going to leave my hex debt at the side over here and jump back into the op shop space. And so when I made that decision, for me, it was really, all right, well, let's jump all the way in the deep end and see where we can go. So from there, I kind of became a store opener. I went over to the UK and did some work over there. And then COVID happened and back to Australia, and now with Uniting Op Shops. So it's been a great journey. And here at Uniting, we're rebranding and remerchandising all of our shops to create a bold new brand. And we've got a great growth strategy through till 2030. So I've been told I'm not allowed to leave until then.
So, Jacob, we heard from Brad and Jazz that that their kind of journey started off as a side hustle, with, in particular, Brad being a collector. Heard from Jane that her journey started hand in hand with her dad, and being introduced to the world, to the secondhand world in that regard. Tell me, in terms of your journey, what was the first gig that you had in the charity sector from an employment perspective?
Yeah, so it was when I was quite young, working in a vintage. So it was like a 75% predominantly vintage op shop in Elizabeth Street, North Hobart. So that's kind of like a restaurant fashion strip with lots of trade. And so that was my first experience, which is full of life and activity, and was semi-curated rather than just one of those op shops where everything's thrown out the back. And so I had a really polished experience. But I think there's some research that says that op shopping or secondhand buying is like playing poker machines. You get addicted. It's that chance and reward that you get on poker machines. And kind of, as I heard Brad and Jazz and Jane speak, it kind of resonated that that's my own career as well. It's kind of, I'm addicted to the hunt and the space that, yeah. So it's destiny whether I like it or not. The addiction's there now.
Yeah, and it's really wonderful having you in this session today, because there's all these different perspectives, but yours is actually being employed in the sector and doing it as a career. So what we're trying to do today is present the various ways that you can make money from the secondhand sector, whether it be as a seller yourself, or whether it be actually working in the sector, because there's so many opportunities in this expanding world of a greater understanding of the importance of circular economy. So let's now turn our attention to how you guys go about selling successfully secondhand. If the question that I really want to understand from all of your different perspectives is how do you go about sourcing items, and whether it's yourselves directly or whether it's the people you're working with. Brad and Jazz, what's your answer to this one?
This is a very broad question for us because we source from a lot of different places. We're sourcing ourselves. We have business partners who source as well. And we've just made a lot of contacts along the way who know that we sell and they like to bring us stuff, or people will call us if they're clearing out their house, or if they're parting with a collection that they don't want anymore. So there's a lot of different ways. I think garage sailing is probably our favorite, most fun sourcing.
Yeah, and we also like deal with like recycling places where they get, a lot of stuff and they're trying to keep it out of landfill. And we support a lot of local op shops who, get inundated with stuff at points in time and need to move some of that stuff on. So, yeah, there's a wide range of opportunities for us and a lot of other people to, make this work as either a side hustle or a full-time gig. But yeah, there's plenty of options out there for us.
We're also always keeping an eye on local auctions, on Facebook Marketplace. So it's a lot of noise in our brain because we're always thinking, where do we need to be?
Yeah, I'm sure, and I'm sure your work is never done as well. I'd like to touch on, you mentioned recycling centres. That sounds like an extremely kind of accessible entry point for people. What's the kind of relation? I don't mean the relationship, but what's the role of a recycling centre, for example, in the business that you have?
Yeah, so I think we've sort of connected with a few of these places that, they might get electronics in that otherwise might end up in landfill, or, bits of clothing that still have value that would otherwise go into landfill. So we work with companies like that to try and, rehome that rather than it landing up in a dump site. So there's often what they call like tip shops around Adelaide that we sometimes go to and deal with. There's I guess like donation bin companies that certain parts of their business will run through an op shop, and certain parts of it will unfortunately end up overseas and clogging up that industry as well. So we try and like come in the middle and provide value in taking stuff that we see value in and providing them a price that works for them as well, rather than just sort of shipping it all overseas and creating another problem on the other end. So yeah, we kind of try and work with a range of companies, especially recyclers, to try and keep our business afloat, as well as supporting them and keeping stuff out of landfills.
And we're always just asking, what can't you deal with? What don't you have an outlet for? So that we're kind of just filling the gap and hopefully solving a problem.
Yeah, and isn't that just happening more and more in everything that we do, whether it's, filling the gap of an empty room you might have in your house being rented out via a platform, or filling the gap of an idle resource sitting in a recycling center that's going to end up in a hole in the ground. I think our whole focus as a society is becoming more attuned to the opportunities, and everyone in this session today here is living proof of that. Jacob, with respect to, I come into this conversation going, well, in the op shop space, is it, in my head, I go, well, the inventory and the stock in op shops, it comes from donations from the public. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I guess our favorite way to receive donations is people after their garage sale on the Saturday, bring it into our stores on the Sunday, and in our stores directly is our favorite way. But we have a number of donation bins at Uniting Op Shops as well. So product coming in through donation bins. We sometimes buy from some of those rag merchants that Brad was talking around. If they've sorted product and we have a gap in our donations, we're able to buy that back. I've got a staff member who goes to auction and loves kind of finding the unique, interesting pieces to add some variety to our spaces where we might not have the donations, particularly through winter. And then we do buy a little bit of pre-consumer product, whether that's from a mainstream retailer end of line, or whether it's just to fill up gaps as well that we can't, everyone's always after a plate stand. We don't get enough donated, so we buy them in new for people to have as well. So yeah, a whole variety of ways that we find our product, but donations are the most important.
Yeah, but amazing for me to hear that you might even go so far as to go to an auction to find something unique. And really, to me, does that speak to how much the sector has evolved in terms of what it has to offer from an inventory and product perspective? Can you shed a bit of light onto that?
Yeah, definitely. Uniting Op Shops, we opened our first op shop in 1933 on Lonsdale Street, and that was very much around picking up clothes from people's houses that were at end of life and mending them, and the term we used were refurbishing and fumigating, to then be able to on-sell them. So it was very circular economy driven, but it was kind of one model of thinking, where now we have all models to really offer greater diversity to our customers.
There's a question that's come in on the chat that I'm going to put to you from Justine. What happens to, and this is a relevant question, I think, to all of you, what happens to the stuff that you don't sell? Are you seeing that there are emerging channels for that to become a resource in a repurposed in a different way? Could you guys share a bit of light on that?
Yeah, so for us, we have a range of different strategies. We know that some stock can sell better in other stores than it does in one set of stores, so we keep it in our stores for as long as possible. Then we've got a mix of different partners that might be recycling partners, through to, unfortunately, some exporters. But we have the Peakbody Charitable Recycling Australia has a fantastic accreditation scheme with exporters, so that we can have confidence that the exporter we're working with has good values, and that kind of end of life has been traced with them. But yeah, unfortunately, the quality and quantity that we receive sometimes can't necessarily be sold in our shops.
And a question to you all here, and let me start with Jane. How do you, or how do your stall holders, how do you know what people want to buy?
I still haven't solved that question, Andrew. Look, I think from the perspective of having a vintage store, be it a bricks and mortar on eBay or Gumtree or one of those online forums, I think it's trial and error, to be honest with you, which doesn't really help, I suppose, when you're starting out. I think from our perspective, we interview all of our store holders to come in. So we are getting a very broad expanse of what people do and a really broad selection. And I think going back to your previous question too, I think people are looking for something unique. They want something quite individual, because when you're buying secondhand and vintage to decorate your home or to dress, you want to sort of express that. You want to sort of go, well, look, I just didn't go down to the local mass market shop and buy this off the rack. I actually found it secondhand and I've teamed it with something else I've got secondhand, and doesn't it look great? I think there's also an element that, you know, buying secondhand, which we call shop ready, which doesn't require any work, that's really hard to do. I personally find it hard to do, and I'm sure people will agree with me. So I think it then brings in that other element of that creativity of, how can I buy something that might be a little bit worn out or a little bit broken down, and reinventing it, whether it's giving it a coat of paint or, you know, chopping its legs off the dining table and making it a coffee table, whatever it might be. It's that element of expression that you can use. And I've always said, if I can sell something that I love, I'm much better at doing it. So I would just say to people, if you're out there and you're looking at doing this, do something that you're loving, because chances are someone else will love it too.
And Brad and Jazz, you must have a really, to Jane's point about trial and error, I would imagine you've been through quite a lot of trial and error. You know, how do you know what people want to buy?
I think, yeah, like it's been a long journey for us to really understand the market that we sell in, and we're still, you know, tossing things up in the air and seeing if they're working and see if they stick. But I think we do have a little bit of advantage in that through our platform, you can go to sold listings and do some research about what is selling in the market and go through categories and really understand what people are looking for at that point in time. So I guess that's a bit of a cheat code that we have for our market, is we can utilize the opportunities that eBay, or the tools that eBay provide, to sort of align our business with. So yeah, we enjoy selling a huge range of things, but we kind of really have to hone in on what is selling so that we're able to maintain our business and our livelihood. So
It's a mix of data, intuition, and just getting it wrong.
Yeah.
And Jacob, you must have a really clear perspective, I would imagine, on what it is that people want to buy, because you can see across a range of stores what is being sold. How do you determine at Uniting what it is that you sell, and is it a direct reflection of what people want to buy?
I think, yeah, really interesting. I like Brad and Jazz's point there around data, and op shops have come a long way in knowing what people are buying and reviewing that data to fill the stores. I think my top tip for someone new, though, coming into the space is not necessarily trusting the customers. You know, we would have customers that ask for a range of product, but then don't purchase it. And so actually people aren't necessarily that aware of their shopping behaviors and shopping patterns, and reviewing what those patterns and behaviors are will make more sales than actually just listening to what customers might say that they want, because sometimes what they express and what their behaviors are quite different.
Very interesting. Yeah. There's a question that's come in that is, I want to put to the group. Does trade in secondhand goods need permits or some type of registration? Or for a garage sale that you just run as a shop? Do you need any type of permit to sell secondhand in the environments in which you all are?
It depends what it is that you're selling.
Yeah.
So we've got 150 stall holders or dealers within our markets. One of them has a secondhand license, and that's because they're dealing with vintage and antique cameras and record players and electrical equipment like that. I can't speak with a lot of authority, but I think if you're just dealing with, you know, if this is just a side hustle for you and you enjoy going out and buying something on the weekend and working on it and then selling it during the week online, I don't think you need any formal training or any business license or anything like that. let's hope you need an ABN and GST registration because you're so successful after a while.
Yeah,
that's
Yeah.
right.
I think that's the main one, especially if you're like having the intention to make money from what you're doing, then following those channels through and registering as a business or an ABN and paying your taxes appropriately is probably the biggest point. Like Jane said, there are categories that are limited in our space and other spaces that you may need some sort of formal sign-off or documentation to sell, but in general, most things that we find in South Australia, at least, we don't require any sort of licensing as such to manage that stock. So,
And it may depend on your location.
Yeah.
So if you're looking into setting up a brick and mortar or online, you may want to check with your council.
So
Yeah,
I can say with certainty, you don't need a permit to host a garage sale as a seller, as someone has asked, but you do, as Jane touched on, with the sale of electrical goods, there are certain requirements that, again, are state by state and worth investigating on the internet what they are. How do you, Jacob, deal with the sale of electrical goods in your environment?
Yeah, so it's different across a range of our stores. Some of our stores test and tag. That's probably the preferred option, is to have someone trained in the test and tag space and then be able to sell a product knowing that it's safe and that it can have a continuous long life. But with response to that last question, if you're unsure of the industry and wanting to kind of start out, volunteering or even looking for some paid work in an op shop is a really great way to start to understand products, what has value, what doesn't have value, but even some of those deeper questions around permits and how you trade and what bricks and mortar look like. There's a lot of knowledge within the op shop sector that people are generally fairly willing to share. So yeah, volunteering in an op shop would be a great way to learn some of that.
And final question in this, electrical goods, because there's the chat's lit up on that. Where can people donate electrical goods? Is that something you encourage or discourage, for example, in the op shop, in the Uniting Op Shop space?
Yeah, so most of my stores would accept electrical. I guess the best way is to ring your local op shop and find out. And then there's a great resource from Planet Arc called Recycling Near You, where you can jump in and have a look and see what's around you that might take electrical goods. But most op shops these days are accepting electrical goods and have processes in place to deal with those.
Thank you, Jacob. So moving on to how you price something. So Brad, Jazz, you guys are on the coalface of this kind of thing. How do you price your items and how do you work that out?
Well, we're lucky that we do have that whole database of sales history. So we can see generally 90 days worth of data, I think,
Through eBay, yeah.
on eBay. And that's really helpful to us. The most important thing I would say is anyone can get online and price something at whatever price they want. So when you're looking at things that are listed online, those prices aren't necessarily what someone's going to pay. So definitely, if you have access to the data like you do on eBay, where you can toggle to sold items, have a look at what's actually sold rather than what's listed, because that will tell you what people are actually paying for an item. But there are also a couple of
further resources like
the one.
Peak is actually incorporated into eBay now, so I think that's gone to 3 years of data. And there's also a paid service called WorthPoint, which kind of congregates data for a much larger period of time. So if it's not within eBay but it sold 10 years ago, you can go back and find that information as well. So
bearing in mind that markets change, and if it was quite a while ago, that might not be relevant anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Jane, have you got anything you'd like to add to that one about pricing?
Yeah, I do want to pick up on that. We get people who come in and wanting to sell things, whether they're moving, downsizing. And I often get shown, I've found it on eBay and look how much it's selling for. But as pointed out, that's what's listed as. It's not necessarily what people are paying for it. Look, I go by the philosophy of what I would pay for something. We personally have a philosophy in our stands in Dirty Jane's. We want things to flip over fairly quickly. We love the fact that the stand is always looking different, that things don't stagnate. I look at it and I think if I've had it for, you know, long enough almost to name it, I've had it too long, and that's clearly then what the customers don't want it at that price, so I reduce it in price. But I think it comes with a lot of experience as well. We help new store holders. You know, if they bring things in, I'll often go up to store holders and go, "That's fantastic. What are you putting on that?" And they'll give me a price, and I'll go, "Okay, look, it could be a little bit high. If you want to move it on, maybe make it a little bit cheaper." I think you've got to have that philosophy of, you want people to buy your stock. You know, you want people to enjoy whatever it is that you've bought in, whatever it is that's secondhand. So you've just got to price it fairly. You know, what do you consider to be a fair price? And I'm sure, you know, all those people who are taking part in your garage sales in the coming weekends, Andrew, you know, it's a matter of, do you want to put this back in your garage at the end of the day, or would you rather someone take it away?
Which is a perfect segue into the issue of haggling and negotiating, and obviously being in the garage sales space, you know, it's a part of the culture, and it's part and parcel. And the way we view the world in that regard is everything's a negotiation, but you also need to approach it with with respect and with some knowledge. But in your respective worlds, how is negotiation and haggling a thing? Jacob, is that something you come across in the op shop space, for example?
Yeah, we definitely come across it. Look, I love it. And as an individual, I would be the first person to try and haggle. So, you know, I think it is part and parcel of the secondhand industry. I think within an op shop space, it's really important to remember the costs that are associated with an op shop. So there's a large amount of waste fees that we need to pay, rental that we're paying. And so this notion that we got it for free and that we can haggle is not necessarily an adequate notion, because it takes up space in our shop and there's a cost to that. And the other thing to remember is that most op shops, are staffed and run by volunteers. So you could be putting a volunteer that, may have mental health concerns in a space that they're feeling unsafe and not confident to haggle. So if you're genuinely interested in something and it might have been there for a little while, or you think the price is slightly unfair, because that happens, we don't have the knowledge on every single product that comes through, I'd be asking for the manager and having a really kind of honest, respectful conversation with the manager around what they might be able to do, but just acknowledging that, the volunteers may not necessarily have the skills or confidence, and that there is a cost for us in running an op shop. And it's not as simple as, we got it for free, so therefore we can sell it for $1.
Yeah, 100%. And how does it work in your environments, Brad and Jazz?
Yeah, I think the biggest place that we come across that would be when we're out garage sailing. So we don't do it a lot in general unless we think it is severely overpriced. But if it's at a point where we're happy with that price and we can make a little bit of money on it and that person's happy, then we'll often just pay what they're asking. I mean, garage sale, there's kind of that ingrained aspect of haggling. It's part of the negotiation and the fun of it in a way, but you're absolutely right. It's all about the approach and how you're doing it and making sure that you're fair with that person, and not taking advantage of the situation, because sometimes there's been opportunities that we've had to buy something at really, really cheap pricing, and that price has been unfair for someone. We'll actually pay them more because we know the value of it. So I think it's just being really fair with each other and understanding what each person's trying to get out of it. And at garage sales, a lot of the time people are trying to make space, so they're happy if you're buying 10 or 15 things to give you a little bit better price.
It's good fun so long as there's a little bit of etiquette there. And we also get it on the other end as sellers, because on our platform people can make an offer. And if you are selling online and you get an offer that you think, this is ridiculous, that's unreasonable, they want me to sell my $50 item for $1 with free shipping, I would say don't get emotional. Don't just decline and block that person. You can just counter back and you might still make a sale out of it. So just being polite with each other, not getting offended, and, if you can make a deal, that's great.
And someone's asked, does it make shoppers more suspicious if your prices are lower than the market? Well, I'm going to answer that in respect to garage sales. no is certainly the answer to that. You know, in the garage sale space, the idea of garage sale prices are that things may be cheaper than the market. So in the garage sale environment, it's all about pricing something depending on what your orientation is. If you're there to make money, or if you're there to sell stuff, or if you're just there to have a enjoyable day meeting your neighbors and having a chat and learning about who your neighbors are and them learning about the story of your stuff. I suspect that in your own respective environments here, you probably don't go about selling stuff cheaper than the market, because you're trying to generate income and revenue out of secondhand. What are your thoughts? Is there any thoughts on that question from any of the panel?
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes. Sorry, Jane.
No.
We all went at once.
Jane, you go.
Well, look, I mean, in Dirty Jane's, we don't really sell what is out there in the market, I suppose. If we are, it is either secondhand or vintage. So you are finding it cheaper than what you would find it new, and what you'd pay as a new retail price. But just from the perspective of pricing things down and expecting hagglers to come in and that sort of thing, I'll often put something in knowing that it's very cheap, knowing that it is absolutely snap it up and take it away. Very cheekily, that's part of my marketing, because I want people to go out there and go, oh my gosh, look what I got at Dirty Jane's, and I only paid X, because they're going to tell all their friends, and then their friends are going to come into the market. So to me, there's a lot of fun to be had with how you price things. And there is always that attitude, as I've said before, of, you know, you want the customer to come in and buy it and take it away and put it in their home and enjoy it for years to come, knowing that it didn't go into landfill. That's the big thing.
Yeah. And you know, in terms of that whole issue of pricing and how to sell the most amount of stuff that you can, can we talk about payments for a moment? Certainly, when we started off in garage sale trail, the idea of anything other than cash in garage sales was kind of bizarre and unheard of. But I would imagine in your space now, the world's changed. How do you maximize the amount that you sell by adopting different payment options for customers? Jacob, over to you for the retail space.
Yeah, I guess, you know, bricks and mortar retail, we still accept cash. We've got FPOS. I think they're probably the two main methods. Occasionally someone might try to pay with a check, you never know. But yeah, having FPOS in op shops is, you know, quite fundamental these days, and realizing that, you know, most op shops that have FPOS also don't have a minimum. You know, I often say, oh, 1 cent is the minimum as well. So don't be afraid to use FPOS in op shop spaces, because it makes it easier for us as well, and less cash that our volunteers need to worry about.
Yeah, interesting. So let's talk about, so the aim of this session is to help people be successful selling, however it is that they do that, whether that be at garage sales or whether that be creating a side hustle or a full-time thing. What is the role of merchandising in your respective channels? Brad and Jazz, how do you merchandise stuff to help make sure it's sold?
For us, that's product photography, because we don't have a storefront generally, unless we take our things to market. So when we're trying to make sure that our items are presentable, for us, that means taking really good, clear pictures. And if you're just starting out and you want to sell online, you really don't need anything fancy. If you've got some nice natural light and a clear background, then you're good to go. You just want to make sure that your pictures aren't cluttered and that you can see the item, it's true to color, show any flaws so that people know what they're getting and they have confidence in you. And that's really all that you need.
Yeah, like part of that as well is like the titles and the SEO behind selling online. So describing the item in ways that people are going to be searching for it, and
yeah, I guess
using
that's merchandising too.
Using keywords to describe the item, so people, when they're searching for something, can come across it. They see the title, they see really good quality photos that Jazz takes, and then that item speaks to them and they want to buy it. So that's probably the top 2 tips from our end.
Yeah.
And Jane, what are your top tips?
Oh, look, merchandising is everything. After pricing, it's all about merchandising. I think it is that presenting the product in the best light. We do quite a lot on the Instagram channel as well, and we employ a full-time staff member at each site, and they just, take photos of beautiful items with the right lighting, ensure that any faults are put across, and make sure that they're taking photos of beautiful detail in items as well. They want to see those really intricate pieces of a piece of furniture, for example. But in store, I mean, I know, we love our store holders all getting behind merchandising. We recently did a spring fest throughout the stores, and they brought in beautiful daffodils and bulbs and all sorts of things. And I think that's what creates that retail experience for them when they come in, because it's all just this fabulous treasure hunt and they never know what they're going to find. But it has to be presented. It has to be clean. It has to be, dusted regularly. People don't want to buy something if it's just smelly and horrible, So while it's not new, it has to be presented so that it's ready to go into a home straight away.
I'm just going to jump into the chat now to a couple of questions, and some of them are particularly relevant to garage sales. So I'll speak on to those. Can you give any tips for handling cash or alternatives? Please be specific to garage sale trail. Well, with regards to handling cash, garage sales, like anything, you need to be alert to how you manage that. Cash box is a really good way. You've got to keep your eyes and ears open for people who might be wanting to get their hands on your cash, but obviously that is the exception and certainly not the rule. But people being able to accept other forms of payments at garage sales are really important. We work with PayPal in that regard because they make it easy to transact using QR codes, which we all learned how to do over COVID. There's also other forms of transaction at garage sales that I'm sure are equally relevant in some of your environments, such as Pay ID. Steph has asked a question around that. That's absolutely a way that you can transact in a cashless way. I know that we've just done some research that 57% of people basically almost never use cash. So they use cash in less than 10% of their transactions. So that gives you an idea of how important, when you're selling secondhand, certainly in a garage sale, how important it is to be able to accept other forms of payment. I've covered the payment issue there. I want to now just address another garage sale question here. Thank you for your patience, panelists. How do you sell more at a garage sale? Well, that's the big question. We say there's a couple of really easy ways to address that. It's all about promotion. So if you live in a highly trafficked street where you're going to get a lot of pedestrian traffic, hallelujah, your marketing is done for you to an extent. But if you don't, you absolutely need to get out into the community and put up posters, which we provide when you register, that you can print. Encourage you also to take them down. But then once you've got people to your garage sale, as the panelists have just spoken about, presentation is everything. So grouping your items together in baskets of the same price, making stuff look presentable, cleaned, grouping items together in the same category. And I think also what Jane spoke about, quirky, interesting, and stuff you love. So in garage sale trail, we've learned that people love the garage sales are best when they're kind of fun. And that whole fun is about expressing yourself. And whether that be in the name of the garage sale you use, whether that be in the type of signage you create, the tunes that you play, the clothes that you wear. And I'm sure that same kind of ethos extends into, your environments. For example, Jacob's been described by Leo Schofield as creating a super special emporium, what do you think the role of self-expression is in these type of environments to be, and the connection between self-expression and being successful selling, Jacob?
Yeah, it's huge. It's everything. I think, tunes, you're right, are really exciting, trying to get people attracted that way. Think about all the senses. What are people smelling when they're at your garage sale? Can you have some baked goods or some incense? What are people seeing? What are people hearing? So the tunes, but also the stories you might share. I think, if someone's looking at a bowl and you tell them that it's your great grandma Doris's, they're more likely to buy that bowl because they've now got a story and a connection to that bowl. So, and likewise an up shop, creating stories and adjacencies so that, bowls are next to spoons, because when you have a bowl, you need a spoon, etc. But yeah, self-expression is everything, both in the spaces we create, but also in the customers that approach us, and realizing that a customer is coming to you because they're looking for their next unique piece. And if they're wearing, 2 pieces of orange, and orange is their favorite color, direct them towards your orange products and really kind of be aware of their expression as a human and how that might fit into your garage sale.
Yeah, and excellent to hear that coming from you. If we're now going to turn our attention to the questions that are in the panel, in the chat, of which there are quite a few, I'm going to direct those to different panelists. There's a question that I think's probably got Brad and Jazz's name all over it. Is it possible to pay someone to do the selling for me? As I have many varied items to sell, but I don't feel confident enough to do it. Pricing, selling, privacy, security, etc. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think that there definitely is places that do that, like consignment stores. Some people will sell on eBay on consignment for people as well. So there's definitely opportunities there. I think it's just about connecting with those right people, or going to something like Jane's business where you can put all those really cool items in a spot that someone else is able to do the selling, the hard part for you, and you've got a place to go to and put those really cool items. But there's definitely options out there for people that don't want to have that, interaction with people for whatever reason that might be. There is options available to people.
Especially with clothing, the rent-a-racks. I don't know if it's as popular everywhere else, but in Adelaide, rent-a-racks are just exploding.
Yeah,
and you can just go and get a space for a set period of time. You take it, you price it, they do everything else.
A question from Jane at Zing Home Organising. What were the name of the past sale websites that give you the amount that items have sold for previously?
So there's Terapeak, which is actually a program within eBay, and there's also WorthPoint, which is the paid subscription-based platform that'll let you do that. There are some auction sites that do the same sort of thing where you pay to see what auction results have been, but for us, yeah, Terapeak and WorthPoint are probably the two that are most
Cover
relevant.
the most.
Yeah.
Okay, great. If I can just answer a garage sale related question to Trisha. If you're doing more than one of the weekends, do you divide the best things over each day or put everything out on the first day? I would be putting everything out on the first day and seeing if you can sell a lot on that day. And if you do, then also encourage you to take your listing down for the next day, because otherwise you'll have people at your front door early. But yeah, it's all about making the most of the opportunity. So get it all out, looking spick and span on day one, and try to sell as much as you can on day one. And you might end up having a shorter day on day two.
We would say, Andrew, you only need to sell it once. So get it out, have the opportunity. It's sold. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question about eBay. If using eBay, how do you go about finding postage rates to quote?
So that does take a little bit of time to understand, and it really depends on what level you're at, because we use My Post Business, and as you start sending more and more, you do get further discounts. But the Australia Post website has a really good explanation of what an item might cost to send. So whether it's going to fit in a small box or a small satchel, a medium box or a large box, it all breaks it down for you how much that would cost an individual to send on a regular basis. But as you grow as a business, that price will come down because you're selling more stuff. So
it does also depend on the location that you're shipping to for the actual cost, whether you want to add express or signature. But for anyone who does want to sign up to My Post Business, that's free to sign up to, and then it's just a matter of quantity.
Yeah.
And final question, because I'm conscious of time, from an anonymous attendee asking an excellent question. I would love to hear from the panelists the best secondhand item they have found. Jane, I'm sure you've found a couple of thousand best secondhand items. Do any spring to mind right now?
This is a very long list. Yes, I actually kept this one. I didn't sell it selfishly. I went to a local garage sale here and I bought a beautiful Japanese embroidered shawl that a lady had sort of pulled out of her drawer. It was in a bunch of stuff that her mum was clearing out. And I asked her the price and she named a price, and I actually gave her far more for it because I said that's ridiculous. And I've kept it, and I just treasure it because it's just one of the most beautiful. I love textiles, and it's one of the most beautiful examples of vintage textiles I've ever seen.
Oh, lovely. And I'm sure, Jacob, you might have come across a couple of items that you hold close to your heart.
Hundreds of items, both good and bad, everything from human bones to items that are worth thousands of dollars. But one of my favorites is I went into one of my stores one day and someone had put out a shell necklace for 50 cents. And I thought, oh, this looks a bit interesting. And it was Tasmanian mariner shells that was about 1890s, indigenous made, and we sold it to a museum for $3,500. So that 50-cent shell necklace had a life now in a local museum in Tasmania. So yeah, that's probably a standout for me.
Wow, what a story. Jazz, Brad?
Oh, there's something that I wasn't able to sell, which I got at a garage sale because I'm just a massive nerd. I found some giant cinema posters, and I love stuff that you find that was never meant to be available. So my favorites are posters from bookshops and from cinemas that were supposed to go in the bin, and somehow they just didn't. So I now have quite a nice little range of Harry Potter merchandise.
Yeah, they're like literally just over there. So yeah, that was a really cool find we found at garage sale. And we found so many cool things for our personal collection and stuff that we know other people are really going to enjoy. So we found a really nice nice signed jacket in an op shop, and we didn't have any idea who it was signed by. So we went and got it authenticated and all that sort of stuff. And it ended up being Niki Lauda, who's a very popular F1 racer, and it ended up going to a collector over in the UK for, I think it was like $2,000 in the end. So yeah, these opportunities just fall into your lap. Sometimes you don't even know what you have sometimes. So yeah, it's really cool.
It's hard to tell if the best thing is the most nostalgic or the rarest or the most valuable.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in here with a question though? I mean, between all of us, I don't think we can count the number of hours that we have trawled through garage sales and op shops and auctions and not found anything. So these experiences are happening once in a blue moon rather than every day, but it doesn't stop us from looking.
But certainly the experience of going and finding something that you absolutely love. And in my case, we're day in and day out, being an orange Adidas top from one half of a fantastic 90s tracksuit. I would never have found that if it wasn't in a secondhand shop. So I don't think it really matters if it's worth thousands, but as long as it's worth a lot here is very thrilling. So on that note, we've come to the end of the session. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you guests join us. Thank you so much, panelists. There's a couple of key takeouts for me that have really risen to the surface. I think Jane spoke about sell what you love. And I think that talks to the whole idea of, doing what you love, and you're going to do it. It sounds a bit cheesy, sounds a bit corny, but if you are involved in things that you love, you're going to know about them, you're going to be passionate about them, and emotions are contagious, and that's going to translate into sales. And of course, merchandising being the other super important point. Has to look spick and span. I think, and in the garage sale trail environment, I would like to leave with this message that in order to be successful, It's all about promotion. You have to get people to your garage sale. So if you're going to do it and you don't live in a street that has hundreds and hundreds of people walking past, promotion, promotion, promotion. I hope everyone has enjoyed this session. We would love to get your feedback. I am going to invite you to respond to a QR code on screen here. This QR code will take you to a survey. We would love to understand if this session met your expectations. Provide us with feedback, good, bad, and ugly. We'd love to hear from you on this. I would like to say a big thank you very much for joining us. This session will be sent out via email later today. And if you enjoyed today, you can join later this afternoon. We have another session around fashion and selling secondhand, sustainability in fashion. And then on tomorrow afternoon, Good Neighbours, Changing the World with Barry Dubois and the fabulous Chrissy Flanagan. So thank you so much for today. We hope that you have enjoyed it. Once again, if you'd like to get involved in the garage sale weekends, they're on November 11, 12, 18, 19. Shop or sell, it's free. Thank you so much. And look forward to seeing you out buying and selling secondhand. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, panelists. Much appreciated.
It's lovely. Bye.